kids. It's me, Sharon McMahon. You might know me from my Instagram account, Sharon Says So, and I'm a teacher. I'm a government and law teacher, and I want to share with you some of my best tips for raising children who grow up to be critical thinkers, who know how to form educated opinions, and who are able to separate fact from opinion. Maybe you've noticed. Maybe you've noticed that this has become a significant issue in the world, where the new standard is, I read it, I like it, it has to be true. Or I read it and I hated it, and everything that source says to me is a lie. I don't like it, so it's a lie. Maybe you've noticed this as a growing problem in America. Let's figure out how to combat that. Tip number 1, you have to be willing to do the work yourself. And you have to show your children how to do the work. Just like we would not expect our kids to get married and move out without ever having seen an adult go to work, sweep a floor, cook a dinner. We model all of those life skills for our children throughout their entire lives so that when they become adults, they have a solid handle on how to do it alone. Right now, it is more important than ever that we model this life skill for our children. And one of the best ways we can do that is starting young, starting at age 3 or 4, using books to help us model these skills of critical thinking. And what I mean by that is when you're reading your kids a bedtime story or just sitting and reading books together on the couch in the afternoon, spend 1 or 2 minutes asking them some open-ended, thought-provoking questions about what you just read. I don't mean like a quiz. I'm not asking you to quiz them on their recall. It's not like what color was Susie's shirt on page 8. What I mean is, do you think that Susie did the right thing when she didn't want to play with her friend? Why? And just being willing to listen to what your children's answers are. It is actually incredibly important for brain development to press into those opinions just a little bit. Don't leave their opinions unchallenged just because you agree with them. This is an incredibly important skill in critical thinking development. Just because you agree doesn't mean that the opinion that your child is offering should go unchecked. Being able to articulate the why behind something, incredibly important. As your kids get a little bit older, you can have these kind of conversations about varying topics. Is it important that we share with our siblings? Why? The answer can't just be because I said so, even though as a mom before, that's what I want it to be. I get it. Listen, I got 4 kids. I know how exhausting it is, and I'm not asking you to be perfect. I'm just asking you to do your best. It doesn't require hours of work on a daily basis. This is just a habit that you can practice, a skill you can practice throughout your children's growing up. So as your kids get older, you can have more conversations about bigger topics, about bigger issues. Do you think it should be mandatory for all Americans to go to church on Sunday? Why? Why not? Press into their answers. Teenagers and I now have incredibly in-depth conversations about hot button issues. And one of the things that I will continually remind my kids, or I will continually ask them is, so do you think that that is just your opinion? Or do you think that that has any basis in fact? And sometimes I absolutely get eye rolls. Sometimes I absolutely get the like, oh no, here we go again. But just like you make your children do chores, just like they have to do things to help around the house because it's good for them, this is something that's really good for them. Ask them, is that your opinion or do you think that's a fact? Then this is really the kicker, my friends. Do the same thing. Model having the same kinds of conversations amongst you and your spouse, you and your friends. Talk it out loud with your children. Okay, so it's interesting to me that I just read this story, and I'm wondering if what I read is the author's opinion or if it really is a fact. So here's how I'm going to try to find the answer to that. Literally verbalizing your process for how somebody could go find facts about a topic. Verbalize your process for how you reach a conclusion. Too often that's just hidden in our minds. Just like when a math teacher gives your kids some math problems, they don't just put some multiplication tables on a worksheet and say, figure it out. They model how to come up with the answer. They do that verbally. They give written examples. They help develop the skills needed to be able to solve those kind of problems. And that is what you're doing as a parent. You are creating that verbal modeling for your children to help them develop critical thinking skills. All right, here's my second tip. This might be challenging for some of you. For some of you, it's going to be easy. But I actually think it's incredibly important to limit your children's exposure to TV news. Some of you are like, great, I hate the TV news. Some of you are like, but I really love to watch it. I have it on in the background all the time. The reason I think it's important to limit their exposure until they have reached an age of where they've been able to demonstrate to you that they actually have the ability to separate fact from opinion is because so much of what is on the news now is actually the opinion of the commentator and is not actually just fact-based reporting. When I was a child, because I'm now 87 years old, there used to be like 30 minutes of news on every evening. There was the national news with like Dan Rather or Peter Jennings. Have 30 minutes of local news, which was like half weather and half high school sports. And in order to make it into a 30-minute national news broadcast, dang, what you included better be newsworthy. They did not have any time to run fluff pieces. They did not have any time to just have people sit and talk about their opinions about how terrible somebody else was. It needed to be a factual news story in order to even make it into the news broadcast. That has gone out the window. Clearly, we now have many 24/7 cable channels who need to fill 24 hours a day. And one of the biggest ways they're able to get you to watch is by having people giving angry opinions all the time that make you feel angry and afraid. Kids are not as well equipped to look at incoming media and determine what is fact and what is opinion, what actually they should be afraid of and what they shouldn't. This is why we don't let our children watch violent R-rated movies when they're 6. We know that that is not good for their brains. So I would hypothesize, it's my belief, that too much incoming TV news is not good for children's brains, just like violent R-rated movies, not good for small children's brains. If it's important to you to be a really informed person in the world, read your news. It's very easy to read now online. It allows you to control their access to stories that you think are important, that you think are worth talking about, and it protects their little brains from the essentially assault of scary facts that are coming out of every news channel 24 hours a day. There's very little good news on the news. A lot of it is really scary to small children, and they may not be able to actually verbalize that to you, but I don't think there's any harm in limiting their exposure, and I do think there could be harm from allowing your kids to have unfettered access to every bad thing that's happening in the world and all the people who are angry about it 24/7. Not only is there the potential for harm with all of the scary things, so much of what is being presented, particularly on cable news, is incredibly difficult to differentiate what the facts are and what the opinion is. It's incredibly difficult for a lot of adults to differentiate. So until they have demonstrated that they have that skill, I think those are the types of programs that maybe you can watch after they're in bed if it's important to you to be able to watch those. Here's my third tip, which is about media literacy. Children do not understand how easy it is to fake charts, how easy it is to make your own graphs. So it's important to teach children about primary sources. How would we be able to verify that somebody actually said that? If I want to repost this on my Instagram account, how would I verify that that person actually said what this tweet says they did? Teaching children explicitly, do not assume that they're going to grow up with this skill. Just like your children don't exit their mother's womb understanding how to cook chicken, they don't exit understanding how to differentiate something that's been fabricated and something that is real. Shocking how few adults have this skill. My guess is because you're watching this, you either feel pretty confident in your ability to do this, or you want to get better at it. And children really do need to learn, what is a primary source? How would I verify something? How would I look that up? And we might view that as the job of schools. And I know that those types of skills are being taught in schools. But what if your kids are absent on the days those lessons are presented? What if they forget? Children need constant repetition to be able to learn something, have that information moved into the long-term storage in their brain. They need repetition. You are much better off giving them too much repetition on this topic than you are just glossing over it and assuming that they understood. You can continue to verbalize your process of saying, you know what? I really like that tweet. I'm going to double check to make sure that it's real. And just let your kids see you doing that. Let your children see you double checking before reposting. Let your children see that you don't just reshare something because you like the sound of it. I like it so it's true is not the standard and has never been the standard and cannot be the standard moving forward. I don't like it so it's a lie, also not the standard. Facts don't require our approval. You don't have to approve of gravity for gravity to be a thing. That's an important lesson that too few adults have been taught, and they're now rampantly spreading misinformation online. These tips have helped. I want to tell you one more thing. We as parents are currently building our digital legacies for our children. With every DM that we send, with everything that we repost, with every comment that we leave somewhere else online, we are building digital legacies for our children, for them to inherit someday. Someday when you're gone, chances are very good they'll be able to gain access to your social media and see what you were doing behind the screen. And what we are doing behind the screen is often a reflection of our true character. What we are doing behind the screen is often who we really are. It's what we're doing when we don't think anyone else is watching. Would I want my children to see me saying this? Would I want my children to know that I reposted misinformation? We are accountable. As adults, we must be accountable for everything we write and for everything we repost. And modeling that accountability for our children is going to serve both you and them incredibly well. Someday when you're gone, when your children are able to go through your Facebook Messenger and see that you used words to uplift and comfort instead of words to degrade, that is going to honor the legacy that you want to leave for your children. You don't want to be known or remembered as the person who was a jerk behind the screen. It's going to color how your children view you. So model that accountability. Know that someday somebody is very likely going to read who you actually were behind the screen, and go forth and raise children who are amazing critical thinkers and who are good humans, both in real life and online.